Uh, 1 second.
Brian, any questions that you have?
No, I thought there were questions for me. That's why I showed up.
I do. Hold on. Let me just get this out.
Well, why
I'm
don't you
in the
ask
hurry.
one? We'll see
Okay.
while you're looking for it, and then you can talk while you're looking.
Man sheds polio virus for 30 years, BBC. Polio outbreak sparked by vaccine. Father spreads smallpox to his son after getting the smallpox vaccine. Reuters. Rototech virus shedding. There's a very
You're talking about news articles? I'm saying, give me an example of a.
Oh yeah, that's right. Just move the goalposts again. So you can get articles, but I can't. Okay, they're not credible unless you say they're credible. I get the game. It's really because you don't know anything that you're talking about.
Scientific study that shows that it sheds and that it's gotten people sick. I'm not talking about a BBC article. I read a BBC article the other day that said there's a such thing as a tranny Muslim genderless Iraqi Britain. So I'm saying, but you're questioning the Centers for Disease Control and saying they're liars, but the BBC isn't?
Yeah, duh.
Well, but okay, so you need now you can quote stuff for me from other articles, but now I
haven't quoted a single article yet. I've only quoted studies that I found in scientific literature, and I'm looking at them right now.
You did it. You're such a liar.
I keep asking you for examples, and now you've quoted me the BBC and routers.
This is proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Okay, acellular Pertussis vaccine protect against disease, meaning that they tested positive for the titers, showing that they test positive for the titers in disease, but failed to prevent infection and transmission in a non-human primate model. So basically these monkeys that they were injected with Pertussis bacteria, which is a whooping cough vaccine, and they carried it in their lungs and they spread it to other primates.
Okay, and did they get sick?
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, I have some, here's another study. Acellular Pertussis vaccine, okay. Outbreak among measles, among persons with prior evidence of immunity, Oxford Journals. There's a famous province or a really curious case in China, Zhejiang province, which is on the coast of China, which is by Hong Kong. They have a 99.9% measles compliance vaccination rate, yet they've had over 700 outbreaks of the measles since 2015. So it sheds. It even says in the inserts it can give you like.
My bad. It's from 2009 to 2012, not 2015.
The disease.
Well, to
vaccinated for.
To whom is it shedding if everybody's vaccinated?
But like I said, you can still get, just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean you can't get the disease.
Okay, so is this the point in the debate that I realized that I was dealing with Neanderthals?
You can still get vaccinated and get the disease. It doesn't like protect you forever.
So these people.
First of all, too, the antibodies wane after a certain amount of years. And when they found this out, they found the antibody titers, so they wane. Like I said, they test effectiveness in the vaccine. That's by measuring the titers. So just because you have a positive titer count just basically shows that you've come in contact with the disease, not that you're not able to catch the disease. So you can still have a positive titer, to a disease that you're vaccinated for and still get the disease.
So they tested these people who had the disease and they were vaccinated and still got the disease, or you're assuming that because you think it can happen?
No, there's studies that show this. Hold on, I have some, and then.
I mean, maybe I approach this topic differently than y'all. I just don't know what outlier cases do to the whole. I mean, I just don't know what kind of argumentation.
So I mean, it's simple stuff. Like I said, read the inserts. Do you guys know what a vaccine insert is?
Of course.
You read that? Okay, so if you would read the inserts, like of the chickenpox vaccine, it would say to be careful because it can shed to up to a certain amount of days. The smallpox vaccine says the same thing.
And they also have to put everything into an insert of any biologic, any medicine, any cosmetic of any side effect that could possibly happen of any time
It could possibly happen.
No, it doesn't mean that it could possibly happen. It means that they're protecting against lawsuits. That's what they do.
Oh, you mean lawsuits?
But I thought you couldn't sue them.
You can sue them in vaccine court. You just can't sue them in a regular court.
No, I'm sorry. They don't get sued. Like the people we pay for the vaccine court victims. The taxpayers does.
So what? Who pays for the lawsuit doesn't mean that it's not a lawsuit.
Okay, for real, dude, let me explain this to you. Okay, so they're protecting against lawsuits from people that can't sue them. That doesn't make any sense because they can get sued in vaccine. You don't even have any idea what vaccine court is. Vaccine court doesn't penalize the pharmaceutical industries. It just gives people money to pay for their injuries that the taxpayers pay for. Okay?
Where the money comes from doesn't mean it's not a lawsuit.
You just said the manufacturer's doing it so they can't get sued, but they can't get sued. Like
the government are the ones who mandate the inserts, not the pharmaceutical companies. And the government mandates that they put everything humanly possible that could ever happen on the insert, which is why they even recommend that they put things in that have never happened, which is why Vioxx had to put in their insert that it caused adverse heart effects when it was proven scientifically 10 years later that that's never the case. And it's still in the insert today. Even though it's never actually happened, they have to keep it in the insert.
They had to pull Vioxx from
They didn't have to pull it. They voluntarily pulled it. And they're actually talking about putting it right back on now because it's never, ever caused anything. It's never caused it. Never. Show me a proof. Show me a single proof. You will not be able to do it. You will not be able to show me a single proof. And you know how I know this? I worked on the Vioxx lawsuits. I actually was part of it. I was a paralegal on it for 5 years. And the lawyers abandoned it because they couldn't prove a single case.
No,
they jumped the gun because they found a whole bunch of people that were old and infirm, had heart attacks, big shock, and they also were on Vioxx. So the FDA said, well, maybe you should warn people this could cause heart attacks. And they said, well, if we're going to do that, we might as well pull it. And that's exactly what they did. And then guess what? Not a single lawsuit was won because they don't cause heart attacks.
But then why did they pull it if it wasn't calling hearts for shits and giggles? Like, why did they do that? For fun?
Probably because there was about 400 million lawyers that had amassed against them, and they were afraid of massive lawsuits, and they said, "Screw it, why bother?"
But why would they do that if they were, if it wasn't causing, right?
It's called a precaution. Everyone does things out of precaution, and then you find out whether something's true or not. You don't just assume something is true because someone issues a precaution.
So I don't. So I'm not supposed to assume because it says in the manufacturer's insert that it sheds because it's in the insert. I shouldn't assume that.
No, you shouldn't assume that anything in the insert is going to happen.
Why?
Because you're not supposed to assume that. That's just not the truth.
Well, why isn't it in the insert? Why do they put it if it's not going to happen?
If I have to go around in circles again.
Oh, no, don't go around in circles again. What am I going to do? I just can't bear it.
Every precaution that could possibly happen, whether theoretical or real, has to be included in the insert, even if it's never happened. And that's
hold
why.
on 1 second. I'm just getting from the audience, Halsey. Can you either turn your mic down a little or back away from it a little?
Sure.
People said their speakers are blowing out.
Well, that's because it's done turned into blood sports now.
I know. Well, people are enjoying it. There's about 80% that love the blood sports.
So
There's about 20% that don't. Just a halftime report here. I've got to do another injection.
Okay, so let me ask you this for what's your name? The evolution.
For Brian, the frog.
Okay, so I have a question.
Brian the frog.
Have you heard of Alfred Russel Wallace? Have you heard of him?
I can't recall.
Okay, so he was a naturalist and co-discoverer of the principle of natural selection. And he was a major, let me see. Sorry, I can't see. I took my glasses off. Prolific generator of ideas on a broad spectrum of issues ranging from evolutionary biology to social and political concerns. He also was a major participant in the anti-vaccination campaigns in the late 19th century. So this is my question. You've never heard of him, but he was an evolutionary biologist.
I mean, look, I'm 38 years old. I mean, I've been out of school a long, long time.
Okay, I was just curious. I thought you may have heard of him since you're an evolutionary biologist. I was just, So I just have this question. So science tells us that evolution results in survival of the fittest, and that natural selection created complex like human eyes and brains and nervous systems. Scientists tell us that the biological technology now present in our bodies has been fine-tuned over 3.5 billion years of evolution to attain the highest possible survival, even against infectious bacteria and viruses. Yet the same scientists who proclaim that the amazing superiority of evolution also tell us that our own immune systems are so faulty that they would get us killed. They claim our immune systems are a failure and they don't work unless they're augmented with vaccine injections.
Well, I can answer that right now if you need me to.
Okay.
That's because you're viewing survival of the fittest incorrectly.
Oh, I am? Okay.
Survival of the fittest doesn't mean which individual person is the strongest and can survive. Survival of the fittest is about populations, which whole populations can reproduce and survive and evolve and adapt to their environment. So this is why this vaccination context is lost on me, because I think about it through a different framework. Let's say 5% of people get autism or get heart complications or something from a vaccine. I'm thinking, well, the 95% who don't, that's great for society, and that's how evolution works through populations.
It's also very eugenicist and communistic thinking, if you ask me. So who cares about the kids that get killed and maimed? You know, the small percentage of the people that get killed and maimed by vaccines, as long as it benefits the many. Wow. You don't even know what your belief systems are.
Individually, our immune systems are weak, but who is more adapted to that environment that is stronger? You know, which populations are stronger that are going to be able to breed and procreate and pass along their genetics inside of that environment.
So, but I mean, smallpox was documented as late as Egyptian times. And if it was such a horrible disease that was killing everybody, then why, how come?
Why didn't natural selection select against it?
I don't know.
Is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm asking that if the disease was around as long as human beings, then wouldn't it have wiped us out? If it was so contagious. In fact, the documentation of this research I found out.
Well, I mean, it's not like you were going to hop on an airplane in 10,000 BC.
No, of course not. But what I'm saying is the disease would have killed everybody in the whole country or village, right? Without airplanes. Get it?
And spread it, right?
Yeah,
where were you going to go? I mean, a lot of populations, we had a bunch of our cousins, Neanderthals and other hominids that were around, in a lot of the hypothetical situation, the hypotheses surrounding that, or maybe disease wiped them out. A lot of scientists, because you say scientists like it's this big conglomerate monolith, but it's individuals. Sometimes they agree, sometimes they don't. A lot of scientists think that disease is what wiped out the dinosaurs and not a meteor, because they said the meteor wouldn't have been large enough to impact the entire planet like it did.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's about population. Sure, these diseases probably wiped out some populations, but other populations could escape, or they weren't affected because they're so far removed from one another. We had little pockets of humanity in sub-Saharan Africa and in the Middle East and in the Caucasus Mountains, and and then they went over the Bering Land Bridge, and they were just little pockets. We never lived in big city environments.
Okay, well, people, always talk about the whole world had to be vaccinated against smallpox, and if we didn't, we were going to get wiped out. So,
Well, I mean, that is
that soundbite that I hear over and over again. My research, smallpox has a slow transmission rate, and it's not highly contagious.
I think you have to get infected through the pustules in smallpox if that's the disease. See, I'm not up on this stuff. I'm a biologist, not an immunologist. But
okay, so that doesn't mean anything, because anybody can get this information and research for themselves. Always remember that, audience. You can get this information and you can research it for yourself. It doesn't matter if you're a biologist or an immunologist or a layperson, all right? All this information and common sense is available to you through the internet.
But I mean, the effects of a pandemic would be more readily felt when I could hop on a plane right now and go to London or Paris or Morocco, even though I'd never go hiking in Morocco, but, you know, or France or anywhere else. And if I did have a highly infectious disease and people weren't immunized against it, you know, they're going to get it. Then when they travel, they spread it. It is much more prevalent in a fear in today's world than it was thousands of years ago, when, you know, it took Rome the better part of a year to march its army down through northern Africa, or Greece, you know, to do the same. It's not like these places were next to each other.
Okay, so the point is, if there was a deadly disease that was in any population, it would have wiped the whole population out, whether it was able to travel or, you know, go to other parts of the world. That's my point. These populations still survived and without being wiped out, without vaccines.
Okay.
Well, I want to ask, at some point we've got to switch over to autism, because everybody's talking about autism.
Well, ain't it just convenient that when they see you, they think autism?
No, it's just because most people don't give a shit about this conversation, and they want to know about autism because that's all they hear connected to vaccines. This stuff is getting too deep for people, and they're falling asleep.
Well, I would say, to ease us into the topic, I would say, from what I know about autism is kind of like what Dustin and I were speaking about earlier with ADD. Then they created ADHD. I don't think it's that we're seeing more autism. I think that they're diagnosing more autism.
I think that's a soundbite that everybody likes to say over and over again. So if they're diagnosing autism better now, then where are the 40-year-olds with diapers? Where are the 40-year-olds that are beating their heads up against the wall and spreading shit everywhere? Where are those people?
I think that's a soundbite that people say over and over again. So one of the Tripedia vaccine inserts lists autism as an adverse event. When you use adjuvants.
In fact, you're having many doctors and you're having many nurses and scientists even come out about vaccines and the potential dangers that they have. Myself specifically, I've worked 10 years in the pharmaceutical and drug industry in various levels, currently as a scientist, and I have done thorough research on vaccines and their components, which my pediatrician was not expecting when I came into the office and rejected to have my children vaccinated. Now, almost immediately before I was even able to present my objections to vaccination, the pediatrician went into attack mode, stating that in essence we were killing our children by choosing to not vaccinate. Additionally, he went on to say that autism caused by vaccines is a debunked theory based on falsified studies, even though I had never raised autism to him as a concern. Quite frequently, you will see many pediatricians rush to this false conclusion that autism is not caused by vaccines because that is what is promoted on the mainstream media. Now, between you and I still do believe that there's a correlation between autism and vaccines. However, with this pediatrician, I knew that that would not be a fruitful conversation. So I decided to change the discussion. And honestly, as I've said before, I put the pediatrician in his place to where he said, I've never researched that. That's actually a pretty good argument. Well, I guess this is a personal decision for you. Now, what exactly did I say to him? Well, I said, my concern is not primarily autism. I said, my concern is with autoimmune disorders. Specifically, there's a component in all vaccines called an adjuvant. Adjuvants are a material or ingredient in the vaccines that hyperstimulate the immune system. You see, if vaccines only contained the viral antigens to the viruses they were targeting, and that was injected into your body would not produce a sufficient enough immunological response to create enough antibodies to protect you against the virus in the future. You can hear this from vaccine manufacturers themselves. It is the main reason why they are adding these adjuvants to their formulations. The adjuvants indiscriminately hyperstimulate the immune system so that it can have a sufficient response to the viral antigens in the vaccine and create protection. But key word here, these adjuvants are indiscriminately hyperstimulating your immune system, What that means is when these adjuvants from the vaccines are injected into your body, you have a systemic, that means your whole entire body, you have a systemic immune response where antibodies may be created not just to the viral antigens that were in the vaccine, but possibly against cells in your own body. So from Wikipedia here on concerns of adjuvants, you can see, in addition, concerns have been raised regarding whether adjuvants may be able to trigger responses to self-proteins causing autoimmunity. Now, if you look at the news today, autoimmune disorders are on the rise. If you bucket these all together, you're more than likely to know lots or all of your family members that have autoimmune diseases. This includes arthritis, asthma, GI issues like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. There are tons of autoimmune diseases, things with your thyroid like Hashimoto's disease. These are all triggered by an autoimmune disorder. So you tell me what's your logical conclusion. In 1962, we were artificially hyperstimulating our immune system with 5 doses of vaccines. Today, in 2016 or 2017, we are again artificially hyperstimulating our immune systems when we are in a developmental stage as small children 72 times. Again, adjuvants by design of the pharmaceutical companies is to hyperstimulate the immune system. That is not conspiracy, that is part of the formulation. So is there any question that we have a rise of autoimmune disorders, things that are caused by the body attacking its own cells, dealing with the immune system, when we know we are artificially hyperstimulating it via vaccines? It is a very probable theory. And in fact, there were researchers that studied this. In the Journal of Translational Science, there was this research article called Pilot Comparative Study on the Health of Vaccinated and Unvaccinated 6 to 12-year-old U.S. children. Specifically, if you look at the differentiation between the unvaccinated populace versus the vaccinated populace, this graph shows how many more times the vaccinated populace is susceptible to various illnesses. What I want to call your attention to is some of the autoimmune disorders, specifically allergic rhinitis. Allergies are in fact an autoimmune disorder, especially if you have severe allergies. And look at that, 30.1 times more prone to allergic rhinitis than unvaccinated children. So again, this study is groundbreaking because it is in essence proving that since we are tampering with our immune systems and artificially hyperstimulating it 72 times or more, we are in fact creating autoimmune disorders.